Good evening, all. This is Pramit Sengupta, research scholar, batch 2425, Management Department. We are here to present some exploratory studies. Topics were assigned by our university, and this is day one. We are on the presentation one. The topic for the presentation goes like this: make or buy decision, outsourcing versus in-house inventory control methods. Some selective methods being mentioned as ABC, WED, FSN, HML, and XYZ. Before I start the detailed presentation, mm, let me tell you that this is not an empirical study. These are situation-based, conceptual, exploratory presentation. So that is why it will be treated, rather it should be treated as project presentations, not as research paper presentations. So let me start. With your permission, I'm on my first slide. Make or buy decision is basically a choice between manufacturing a product or, compared to that, in-house production, purchasing from external resources. Now, this decision revolves around one basic objective. As we can see in our screen, it is based on most cost effectiveness. That is the primary objective of this make and buy decision. Now, it is aligned with the organizational goals, policies, and budgets, so it varies. But factors affecting decisions of make or buy are primarily cost based, that is our total cost of production involving material, labor, and overhead. And of course, it's based on long term and short term, both type of cost classifications. Now, when I'm saying long term and short term, I'm not meaning in terms of taxation. That is not 5-year time. It can be 10 to 15 year also. Now, capacity and resources. If we categorize our make or buy decision in this broad head, then we see that availability of machinery, labor, and other ingredients of production are considered only for underutilized capacity or fully utilized capacity. And when we are in graduation time, and definitely also when we are studying our masters, we have all done the capacity production computations in flexible budgets. Now, this is basically talking about that capacity switching and capacity utilization. If we go on, the other aspects of this make and buy decision revolves around the quality control, which is another cry of the day for the industry also. It talks about the in-house production with tight quality monitoring, which is known as QC control these days. And buying may associate risk also regarding the supply of quality in the material. Core competencies basically is dependent on the outsourcing of core or non-core activities decided by the company, which I'm trying to say, if material components are being ordered from outsourced units by a parent company, then the quality control needs a thorough inspection and checking. And if it is done on the hindsight, that is, it is in build production, if it is being followed, then the quality controls are not that stringent. Flexibility and lead time. It talks about the faster in deliverable. Buying may offer faster delivery, and making may provide control over production schedules. Supplier reliability, which we already also talked about, the quality control point, it basically depends for reduction of risk. Delay in quality issue and reduction of risks are two sides of this parameter. through which the confidentiality of the project is evaluated. Strategic control is also another aspect through which this make or buy decision is being judged from for both in house and outsourced productions. Now, as we were talking about the two sides of this make or buy decision, as we see in the next slide, we will go deep into the both sides of production. That is, outsourced inventory control units. What are the definitions, advantage, disadvantage, and most importantly, company applicability of that kind of production. And then we will dive deep towards the in house production. So let us go through each of the process one by one. First of all, it's outsourcing inventory control. As we see in our presentation, it is defined as delegating inventory management task to third-party service provides logistics firms. For example, we can share, it's mentioned in deep also, web hoppers like TCS, ClearTax, like Mahindra Logistics. There are some primary examples through which the companies are managing their productions entirely depending upon third-party service providers or logistics providers. Let us discuss about the advantage and the negative side of this. Outsourcing of entire production or some part of production may reduce internal workload and operational complexity. Because, for an example, through my experience, what I've seen in Ondale Airport project, the entire part of ERP and networking was outsourced to Genpact team. And parallelly, the internal audit department was outsourced to Deloitte. And the primary reason behind that was these points of advantages through which Bengal Aeropolis Projects Limited earned their revenue and made their process smooth as per standards of Six Sigma. Now, this is talking about that. Access to export system and technology. For example, which we talked about the logistics system, ClearTax and Mahindra Logistics, wherever there is an overseas logistics situation or even between state logistics situation, these expert systems and technology, most importantly, ever rising with the decades, it helps to the process of production. There is another aspect of this advantage, rather we can call it as a side or an cutting edge of this advantage, that is the scalable solution. Now, business needs scalable solution. Whenever we see that the operational scales are not suitable as per in-house production or its parameter, then some departments, as we talked about earlier, or maybe the entire process can be outsourced to a third party. Lower capital investment in infrastructure for the system. Again, I'll take my own working experience. Talking about the Ondale Airport project, I've seen entire fencing and the construction works was outsourced primarily to JSW and with L&T. Now, this was divided in proportion. Who made the fencing? Someone made the entire constructions of the aerodrome. Now, this was divided. But definitely the entire process of this construction was distributed between these two third parties. So it lowers the capital investment in a way because at the mother company being trying to do the constructions, again, the main cost of production, material, labor, overhead would have been a huge factor in cost control. That was the decision logic behind outsourcing. Now, on the high side, if there is a pro, there will be con. there are disadvantages of this outsourcing unit. Now, what are the disadvantages? Less control over inventory and accuracy in handling. Now, primarily, what I have seen in my work experience also, uh, delay in supply. There are a few parameters. One of them is definitely this delay in supply, late in payment release, and most importantly, in some aspects, providing lack in quality or rather lesser quality productions at a time of deliverable goods. These are the three basic problems of less quality control. If we move on, dependency on vendor performance is another aspect of disadvantage side. That is, if entire process is being outsourced to a new third party, maybe 2, 3 years down the line each year, it has a cost implication. Parallelly, it gives the entire control of the process to that third party or outsourced company. So this is another negative side of this outsourcing. Data security, confidentiality concern are these days cutting edge, which are new cause of lacunas or other worrying aspects for a mother company if they outsource some of their projects or their departments to third party. Now, as I have mentioned here, for which type of company it is best suited for. Non-core functions, which is basically departments we're talking about, and companies lacking internal capabilities or seeking for cost reduction may go for outsourced inventory control method. That is a management decision for which we're studying this topic. Now, as I said earlier, there are a few company examples who are following this process. Developers like Tata Consultancy Service, ClearTex like Mahindra Logistics, Business Computing India. They're using several inventory management companies also are there in India who are following this process of outsourcing in inventory control method, or rather we can say selective inventory control method. This was all about outsourcing in and outs, that is advantage and disadvantages of inventory control method for a manufacturing company primarily. Now, if you move down, there is another side which is in-house inventory control. Let us go through the definition part first, and then we'll talk about the advantage and example and etc. It talks about managing inventory internally using company resources, staffs, and systems. Now, for an example, uh, say I've mentioned here DHL Supply Chain India, this chain of logistics. They're entirely using this inbound, not only cost of production, but resources and staff also. It's a pure example of inbound inventory control and selective control method in materials management. Now, what are the advantages of this kind of process, which is not outsourced? Greater control, visibility over inventory process. Definitely, if the inventory production process is not outsourced, then it is on my hand, or rather in the hands of parent company, who can choose and who can make a mix and match about the scales of production, mix of production, which we talk about in cost and management accountancy, and definitely the cost of production. Then better, better customization and alignment with the company policies. If companies decides upon reducing their scales of production, switching their product line, or even merging up with some new parent company, then these customizations are most handleable and useful and also applicable in in-house stock control method compared to outsourcing, because the decision makers are in board of directors. Enhanced data security is compared to outsourcing stock control method. This is definitely in the hands of IT department of the parent company. So goes without saying, the data security is far higher compared to outsourcing units. Now, these are the advantage. Now, if we talk about the negative side of this type of production, then we'll see that higher operational cost. That means we are talking about the office and office and administrative overhead from cost sheet, which involves staff, systems payment, and space that is for rent of the building or rent of the entire premises, maybe. These are higher in cost structure if you go for in-house production of stock control. Requires skilled personnel, robust infrastructure. Yes, definitely. If my entire chain of process are being maintained by my in-house management staffs, so two most important parameters which will be in concern, they are definitely skills and the infrastructure of the company. And finally, may lack flexibility in scale if changed quickly. And quickly now, here it means maybe in 2 year or 3 year time, not yearly basis. But if company policies are changing within a short period, then this can be a hazardous process to switch the entire production system if it is entirely inbound. Best suited for business with specialized for sensitive inventory control, companies wanting to direct oversight and strategic control, they should follow this type of production. It basically decides the business size, nature, resource, and strategic policies of the management. Now, in house inventory control, as I already mentioned, are basically being maintained by some of the logistics and supply chain companies across the India. One of the mentionable companies, DHL Supply Chain India. Our topic moves on to some selective inventory control method. About this make and buy decision, it starts off with ABC analysis. Now, ABC, as we know, is known as always better control. It is quantified as costs upon quantity. Now, these three categories are divided like this. A category, which is 10% in item, but 70% in valuation, which basically is found in a retail store. High-end smartphones are examples of that, or even luxury clothings, any brand you can imagine. These are the examples of A-type inventory control method in selective inventory control under materials management. We come down to the B type. It has 20% of item in store having more or less 20 to 25% of value. If we go for examples, we'll find mid-range headphones, even today's earbuds and etc., or clothing item in some retail store. Now, because most of us are dependent upon many retail stores these days, especially in urban areas, that is why I have chosen the sector of retail store to show the categorizations of A, B, and C type of inventory control method under materials management. We come down the next category, which is the type C category. It has almost 70 to 75% of items in store, but valuing up to only 10 to 15%. That is the last category. Now, if we go for the examples based upon the retail store, we will find USB cables or even low cost accessories in this kind of retail stores. The next tool for selective inventory control method for make and buy decision under materials management will be weight analysis. Now, weight, as we see, the entire acronym is being divided like this: vital, essential, and desirable. Now, basically, it talks about the criticality to operations or production. That means which is the vital item, which is the essential stock, and which are desirable. It all talks about that. Now, vital section discusses about immediate availability needed and stock out will be unacceptable in case of vital category stock control system. Next is essential, important, but can be tolerant in short delay, means slow moving, we can say. And finally, we come down to the desirable section of inventory control method, which is non essential by type. Delays don't impact the operation process. So, non moving or slow moving again, most slow moving, we can say. As I'm aligning each of the selective inventory control method with company life situation, because as I said, this is not based upon empirical data on research mode. So it has to be based on the company examples as a case study mode. So here we find Mahindra CIE Automobile Limited is a company who uses this technique, this type of selective inventory control method. Other industrial uses will be common in healthcare, maintenance, and manufacturing units in the sectorial spread of Indian industry. Third category of our selective control method is FSN analysis. Now it talks about fast moving, slow moving, and non moving stocks. In marketing, it is more known as consumer goods, but in stock control method, it has some dimensions. What are the dimensions? Frequency of use in movement. This is the primary dimension of this type of selective control. Fast moving resemblance are found high issue rate, frequent usage. Examples of the product line can be snacks, we all use it, milks, fruits, vegetables, and daily necessities of other categories. Definitely, we are finding consumer goods. Slow moving, the next category, signifies moderate movement. Again, I'm aligning that to the example. Seasonal item, specific types of clothing, which we find suppose in winter period in our country, or specialized equipments, can be musical, can be electronic, can be surgical. And finally, we are introspecting about non-moving category of stock, which are rarely or not used, rather never used in recent period, this type of stock. What are the examples? Outdated electronics. For example, now if I search about floppy disks, even long play records. Some of my nephew does that. I know that is why I'm saying this. There are markets in Calcutta where in premium you can buy these products. Even today, for personal and regular use. Damaged goods. We all know that who are curators, they do it. Or production farms, old collections. So basically, it's antique and curated goods. It talks about that. Uses are found in identifiable obsolete or excess inventory where there are stock wastages mainly. This method should be applied to control the inventory flow of issue. Our next topic of discussion under selection or selective control method will be HML analysis. HML, as we can see in our PowerPoint, it discusses about high, medium, and low issue of stock. Now, high cost category of inventory needing strict control. That is the significance of this category. Aligning that to the industry will be a critical component in a manufacturing process like high precision bearing or key sensor in an industrial machine. These are examples of strict control, high cost inventory. Next comes medium cost, the moderate cost attention. Examples: raw materials used in manufacturing like especially steel or plastic designs, or consumables like office supplies and IT equipments. These are the areas of moderate cost control in selective stock controlling method. The last category of HML will be low cost category, which is inexpensive, lenient control it requires. Examples: cleaning suppliers, papers, staples, and other office equipments, rather supplies, or small tools. These are categorized under low cost category with lenient control method. Usefulness, as we see, it is used for budgeting primarily to procure a departmental planning or even in sometimes an institutional planning. Next category of inventory method will be XYZ analysis. Now, before we go deep into XYZ, there is a matrix as we can see in our screen. It talks about a comparison between volumes of production on the y-axis and uncertainty in production on the x-axis. Now, as we go up in C to A category, we can see that high volume stable goods are becoming low uncertainty levels in fluctuations of stock movement. This matrix talks about the hindsight coordination between ABC going up and XYZ going down, and ABC going down with XYZ going up. Detailing the XYZ system, it is basically inventory value, consistency, or consumption predictability. X is basically regular consumption, high predictable stock items. Example can be common mobile phone charger of any Reliance, Jio, Airtel, any service provider you can mention. Y category will be variable moderately in demand with moderate fluctuation of demand. That is, for example, summer cooler from a company like Godrej or Whirlpool. Because once the rainy season goes down and we have our Ashin month, and definitely we are no more looking for this kind of products in our surroundings. Next is the Z category. It talks about the unpredictable consumption in inventory control method, specifically hard to find accessories for discontinued mobile phone model. This is applicable. The demand for such item can be found sporadic, unpredictable, potentially shortage or excess in inventory. This is the cause and effect of this categorization of X, Y, and Z, which is regular, moderate, or low consumption, or rather unpredictable consumption in nature, in selective stock control method. Now, because based upon that, the company basically prepares its store for the next selling season. That is the requirement of XYZ. And we can see the relationship of XYZ with ABC, as per which the departmental stores are being redesigned in each of the selling season for each of the trading and manufacturing units spread out across the country. So these are the methods through which selective stock control can be done through our parent topic, which we were discussing, that is whether should we make or whether should we buy a stock control method, or a manufacturing process for cost of production. Here, priorities as we see are control, that is talking about cost control, optimization of resource, and improvement in efficiency. These are the three basic objectives for which till now we have discussed these many alternatives of selective stock controls just on the conventions of make or buy decision in materials management. Now, as I mentioned before, because this is not an exploratory study, so there are limitations in literature review, and that is why I have mentioned a few literatures, or very few rather, we have found. The primary reason behind this goes like that. It is very hard, really, to find cost records, rather cost and management records, which is available over internet without any cost effectiveness because of the cost audit report and the standards. Now, there are databases through which this can be applicable and available. Unfortunately, I don't have that institutional access. Rather, I don't have also the personal access to all those databases. So I'm really sorry about that. We could not explore further to the research articles regarding selective stock control on make or buy decision. So this is the main limitation of my exploratory study. And that is why I do not call this as a research article, but rather it's an exploratory study on a convention of cost and management accounting for management decision making. So finally, as a conclusion, as we can see here, we can conclude like that. Inventory control techniques like ABC, XYZ analysis to optimize the decision making process. This is the main core idea behind the entire discussion till now. It provides the empirical insights into how firm decides between in-house production and outsourcing of the same units, considering factors of cost, control, and strategic focus. The next main fulcrum of this study will be integrated approach aids in determining which parts of manufacturing in-house and which part to be outsourced on a balance of cost and consistency. Finally, we single down upon providing a main framework for understanding how this decision impacts organizational performances overall. That is, we're talking about budgets, peripheral planning of departments, and visions and missions of a company. This is the impact point of our entire discussion till now. I hope we are through with the topic. If you have any question, please throw that. I'm available over WhatsApp and email. My registered email with university is sen.promith.official@gmail.com. Anytime, please throw me some questions on selective stock control for make and buy decision if you have any. Thank you.